Okay, so we talked about the rule of 3, but now let's go back to the rule of 0. And we'll look at this in the context of the complex number that we have been considering this week. Okay, so there are several default special member functions that every class is born with. So if I just declare a class A and all I do is give it a simple integer field, then it's really the same as if I created a class with a default constructor that does nothing, a default destructor that does nothing, a copy constructor that just does a basic struct copy of copying the fields one at a time, and an assignment operator that also just does a basic struct copy, right? If I don't do anything else when I declare a class, the compiler basically makes all this stuff for me by default, okay? And if they're good enough, I should just use them. That's what the rule of 0 says. Since all I have is an integer in here, I'm not allocating any memory, I'm not doing anything special, then the compiler makes all this stuff for me. It's good enough, I should just use it. Default, kind of this naive struct copy is good enough. They do nothing, but they're good enough. The one thing I might want to change is the default constructor, because maybe I want to at least initialize this field to 0. Okay, but for everything else, the destructor, the copy constructor, and the assignment operator, I can just use their default implementations. Now, it's one thing to note. If we do write our own, for any one of them, it overrides the default version in the compiler, and the compiler won't provide one for us. So actually, to satisfy the rule of 3 or rule of 0 is if I implement one of them, I need to implement all of them. And likewise, if I don't need them, I shouldn't implement any of them. And I should just use the one provided by the compiler. So with the complex number, I'm just going to go back. In one of the previous videos, I added in a copy constructor and assignment operator, but now we know by the rule of 0 that that's a bad idea. That since I don't really need them, I shouldn't implement them. And since I just have a couple of double values in here that are easy for the compiler to manage and copy for us, then I don't need a destructor, I don't need a copy constructor, and I don't need an assignment operator. So I'm not going to implement them. And that makes my complex number class a lot simpler and a lot easier to understand. Right, so in summary, complex is simple, and the rule of 0 applies. We don't need to implement the copy constructor, assignment operator, or the destructor.